Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, specifically Dungeons & Dragons 5e. What's the topic for today? Well, it's about modifying the villains in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, the dungeon level. That's the first level of Dungeon of the Mad Mage. I thought this would be the best topic for today because it's been preying on my mind. I am currently running the game, therefore hopefully I have something useful to say. This is a Dungeon Master Guide. For those of you who are players and you're playing through this adventure, this is not the right video for you. This is a Dungeon Master Guide. That means there are going to be spoilers. So don't hang around, go and watch one of my other videos, come back some other time and we can have a chat about something else, okay? I have plenty of videos for players. Okay, the first level of Dungeon of the Mad Mage is called the Dungeon level. Very creative. But it's really very disappointing. I was not happy with the first level, and as it happens I've actually run through this particular level before in the past, not with Dungeon of the Mad Mage but previous versions of Undermountain. So I thought, well, I would be getting a good deal, and of course, you know, updating things, you get a chance to do it better than you did it before. The problem is there's really no good big boss or climax to dungeon level. There really isn't. There isn't anything there that's sort of meaty as far as I'm concerned. And I had issue with that, so therefore I decided I would go and get tinkering. Now there's actually two factions inhabiting the dungeon itself on this level. So how did this level become boring? Frankly, I don't understand how it could possibly occur. The problem is not so much the fact that you have two factions, but the fact that they haven't really got really good villains for each faction on that level. Now the first faction is the Undertakers, which is basically fake vampires. Their leader is a fake vampire. Yeah, fake vampires are better than a real vampire as a boss, isn't it? That's what I wanted. That's what you wanted. Seriously, I don't understand this. Part of the reason I think that they've gone this route is probably because of previous versions of Undermountain, and that's why they've gone, let's do fake vampires this time. It doesn't matter if you give the leader of the fake vampires, the Undertakers, a flesh golem. That doesn't make it an interesting and exciting boss battle or climax. Not for me anyway. The second faction is the Xenatha Guild, which is just basically full of goblins and bugbears, and really the most exciting aspect of this faction is the fact that there's a whole bunch of intellect devourers running around that you will probably come across and the players will have to deal with, and it won't go down well. Hilarious at times, absolutely hilarious. But yet again, Xenatha the Beholder is not actually on this dungeon level, which we are going to correct in a roundabout way, you might say. So I don't consider the following creatures and monsters a satisfying boss or villain for characters of level 5. Now the first one, it doesn't matter what you do with it, it's still not a real villain for me. It is just a bag of hit points. A flesh golem is a tough fight, yes. It's a boss fight, but it's not a villain. It's not a good villain. It is just full of hit points and lots of damage resistance. That's your biggest issue, right? Immunities and resistance, flesh golem, that's them. But it's not a great villain, so I do not consider that worthwhile. Also, the Bandit Captain, it doesn't matter if you make your Bandit Captain male or female, it doesn't up the ante. For me, it's just another human bandit who's pretending to be a vampire, and you can give them the flesh golem and it still doesn't make any difference to me, as I said. So I was not excited by that. The third one that could possibly have been a boss are were-rats. But the were-rats detailed in this level pretty much scaredy cats and run away. They don't have the kind of firepower to deal with level 5 characters who will probably be able to deal with them pretty efficiently, and I found my party did, so it's probably going to happen the same way for you. And I suppose you could say, well, you can change the were-rat stat block and make it a beefier, nastier monster, or give them spell casting or something like that. Again, I did not feel that was a satisfactory villain for this level. again, let's go back to goblins and bugbears. There's plenty of goblins and bugbears, none of which I always consider them sort of the foot soldiers. I don't really consider them a big bad villain, not for level 5. When you go from level 1 to 4, that's a little bit different. But level 5, the power level of a character and the kind of game that you're playing when you get to level 5 is very different. So you've got to have a really good villain to work for them. Otherwise, it's going to get crushed and it's going to come off as being sort of half pie. Now, the Halls of Undermountain had this level controlled by a real vampire. There was a real vampire on this level. And I like that idea much more than having a fake vampire controlling a bunch of fake vampires. You could hide that vampire within the Undertakers if you wanted to. They might not even be aware that there was a real vampire amongst their ranks. That would still be interesting. But I haven't done that, okay? I'd already done vampire on that particular level. I've done it in the past. I did it with Dungeons and Dragons 4E, and I think the designers probably had the same feeling, that they didn't want to repeat what they'd already done before by having yet another vampire. So I looked at two possibilities with regard to my villains. I decided that two big bosses might be faced on the dungeon level. That means that they didn't necessarily have to be faced. They could be faced. There might be opportunities to do so, or they might just run into them in some way. The first one that I really thought was worthwhile considering because of the factions controlling that region was Xenatha the Beholder Crime Lord. Now, why am I selecting Xenatha the Beholder Crime Lord? Obviously because a Beholder is a far more vicious and interesting villain, and Xenatha himself is just mad as a hatter, so perfect. The problem with this particular Beholder is there's no stat block for Xenatha. You could look in Xenatha's Guide to Everything, won't find anything. There's nothing anywhere. The only thing you're going to have to use is the monster manual, the stat block on page 28. That's all you've got. You can make adjustments to it, but that's what I used in my game. Okay, so I picked him. The other one was Halaster Blackcloak, the Mad Mage himself. I thought that would be a really good villain. Now, they already have an opportunity to face down Halaster Blackcloak, but it's not really Halaster Blackcloak himself. It's really not even supposed to be a face-off. It's more a discussion, a message being delivered, and I didn't really want that. I actually wanted my players to get scared. When you think about the Curse of Strahd, the players experience and meet Strahd early on, and I thought, well, okay, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, there's a long adventure ahead of them. I want them to meet Halaster as many times as possible, and I'm going to start off early on. And so I decided Halaster Blackcloak was a possible villain for this level. In fact, probably more likely than not. And if you were looking for the stat block for Halaster, it's in Dungeon of the Mad Mage on page 310 to 311. So those were my two villains. So how did I use them and present them in my game? That's the question, right? Well, the first one, let's start off with Xenatha. Xenatha the Beholder Crime Lord might not be actually encountered on the dungeon level itself. I decided that was probably not likely. In fact, I wanted Xenatha to potentially be available or experienced at some point, not necessarily on the dungeon level, but while they were doing the dungeon level or doing the second level, which is the arcane chambers. Things didn't work out quite that way. But the mad creature could be challenged in his guild lair or hideout. That's really where I thought it was going to be much more interesting, because they would learn about Xenatha in the dungeon level, and then they could go and pursue Xenatha to try and take him out and remove his control from this area. And I thought that was far more interesting. Now, if you're looking for the lair for Xenatha, you can go to Dragon Heist, the book, on page, I think it's 102 to 114. And there's a map in there. Now, if you can't get access to it, you don't have the book, Dragon Heist is yet another expense. You should be able to find a map of his lair, maybe not all of the room descriptions and all the creatures and all the detail around his lair, but you can find the map on Google. Just Google it, you will find it. It was really easy to find. Not a problem. I didn't expect my group to face Xanathar and that would be it, okay? I did not plan for Xenatha to be something that would definitely happen. It was only going to be a chance or an option, depending on how things played out. As it happened, they did wind up facing Xenatha through, I guess, tragedy in many respects. That often tends to be the catalyst for lots of adventures, right? So in the end, the characters had a death, and that death led to them going to Waterdeep, talking to the leaders, asking for help, and to get that character raised from the dead. And my group did a favour for the Waterdeep leaders, and their task was to assassinate Xanathar. So they actually did defeat Xanathar and his lair bodyguards as a favour to the Waterdeep leaders. Much to my surprise, I was absolutely shocked that they were able to do that. But then again, it doesn't matter that your monster is invisible. Sometimes players have ways of dealing with that, and they found a really good solution. I'm not going to share that with you. Okay, next, Halaster Blackcloak. Now, Halaster Blackcloak is much too hard for a group of level 5 characters to defeat. Even level 6 or 7 would be beyond them. But what you can do is instead I set a different quest condition for Halaster. All they needed to do was face off and escape from the Mad Mage. That was my quest condition. Doing so completed that section or that milestone for that part of the dungeon or adventure. I thought that was the easiest way to deal with it. Now, I do things a little bit roundabout. You may not like what I've done with this particular part, but this is how I saw it, because there's lots of different motives that Halaster have. And I thought I'd pick one of them, and the one that I liked the most was playing with them. So Halaster would be waiting at the stairs to the next level. That's where I positioned Halaster. So they would complete everything else, and when they would decide they're going to go down to the next level, which they could do, that's where Halaster would be waiting. Halaster would be presented very much like Willy Wonka. I played Halaster like Willy Wonka. I know that sounds appalling to some people, but I thought it was entertaining. They liked it. And he was asking for a golden ticket for entry into his dungeon funhouse. And of course, a lot of older style dungeons were always referred to as a funhouse experience. And that's what I was trying to go for. The only thing is that even though he was asking for a golden ticket for entry to get down to the next level, the characters would have no way of actually having that golden ticket. The only way they could get that golden ticket was by facing Halaster and surviving, essentially escaping. I knew that I wasn't going to shut down their escape route. They could do that if they wanted to. So that was my condition. So what happened? The golden ticket, if they survived and escaped, that was my condition. I suppose it's possible that they might actually defeat Halaster, but that doesn't really matter because Halaster can come back later on. The golden ticket would appear in one of the characters' spell books or in their gear if they faced the mage and escaped and survived. That was my condition. And things really played out very, very peculiar. It was really peculiar. I did not expect it. I was so shocked when my players did this. My group has a Tabaxi character who is a rogue, and he stole the mage's spellbook, much to my surprise, because he's walking around with Xenatha the Beholder's invisible ring. So he was invisible. He took it, he ran away, he did it successfully, and the rest of the group decided to follow him, and eventually they found, as it happens, the golden tickets they needed in the back of Halaster's spellbook. And they were quite pleased with themselves, and I thought that was a really good result in terms of how this played out. So that means I used both of those villains, but only planned to necessarily use only one specifically, but there was a possible second one if they wanted to. And frankly, it worked out really well. So I'm hoping this video was useful to you, and this content was going to help you in some way figure out how to make your dungeon level of Dungeon of the Mad Mage, the very first level, better than it was before. Maybe you've got a better idea. That's fantastic. Good news. Now, if you're interested in more content from my channel, I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters that you are welcome to go and check out. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing video content like this, you can do that through Patreon, the Amazon affiliate links down in my description, the merchandise shelf underneath my videos, or just watch my videos, that's fine too. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And I go live a lot. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.